So today we're going to be showing you how you can replace your broken LCD on your iPad 10th generation. We're going to be walking you through the entire process from disassembling your iPad to reassembling it with a brand new LCD. But before we get into the repair, there's two very important things to know before you start. So if you're replacing your LCD, chances are you've also damaged your digitizer, which is the glass layer above the LCD which controls all the touch functionality on your iPad. If you have damaged it, then you're going to need to replace it with either an aftermarket digitizer or a genuine Apple digitizer. If you want to use a third-party Apple Pencil with the iPad after repairing it, then you're going to want to stay clear of aftermarket digitizers, just because they generally don't work well with aftermarket digitizers. But if you're using a genuine Apple Pencil, the iPad 10 aftermarket digitizers will work as well as a genuine digitizer. The benefit of this is that aftermarket digitizers are much easier to come by and will be a much more cost-effective solution, unlike a genuine Apple digitizer, which will most likely be more costly and harder to come by due to them having been pulled from a working iPad 10, as currently Apple do not sell replacement digitizers. The second important thing to know is that there's two different types of models for the iPad 10th generation. There's a Wi-Fi version and then there's a Wi-Fi and cellular version. The model we're working on in this video is the Wi-Fi version, and you can find out which model you have by looking at the engraving on the back of your iPad. There are some internal hardware differences between these models, but this shouldn't affect the repair we're doing today. But if you do have a cellular version, you might notice when you open your iPad up, there are some differences compared to the one we're working on in this video. Lastly, if you need any of the tools or parts we use in this video, we're going to link them all in the description below. Okay, let's get into the repair. So as always, the first thing you're going to want to do to start this repair is power your device off and make sure you discharge the battery below 25%. We're going to be working with tools very close to the iPad battery, and if it's fully charged, there's a much higher risk of causing a short or it catching fire if the battery is accidentally damaged during the repair. So it might take a bit longer to wait for it to discharge, but it's worth doing to keep yourself and your device safe. Next thing you're going to want to do is heat the iPad. This is going to loosen the adhesive and allow you to pry the screen off. We're using our forward vacuum separation machine to do this, but if you don't have one of these, you can either use a heat mat or failing that, a hairdryer. Just make sure you're heating the screen so it's hot to the touch. That's how you'll know the adhesive is loosened enough to start prying. If you're using a heat mat, you want to be heating somewhere between 55 to 65 degrees Celsius and heating it for around 5 to 10 minutes. Now the device has been heated up, you can grab your prying tool and insert it between the frame and the screen. At the moment, the iPad is upside down with the charge port on top. If you're struggling to create an opening, you can always use a suction cup to help lift the screen up and away from the frame. You can also use small amounts of IPA to help with prying and loosening the screen. When you've got the bottom right hand corner loose, you can insert a prying card and leave it in the bottom right hand corner to prevent the adhesive from resealing. Do the same for the top right corner. Now it's time to pry on the left hand side. We're being super careful along this left side. We're only putting our prying tool a few millimeters into the device because there's a few delicate flex cables and the front camera along this side. Move the prying card in the top right hand side over to the left hand side. Keep prying along the left hand side. Spin the iPad around so the charge port is now facing you. Now use the left hand corner to lift the screen up and away from the frame. Slowly lift it up and your iPad will open like a book. Make sure that your device is still hot and the adhesive has been adequately separated with your prying tool. If you feel quite a bit of resistance when opening it up, you can reheat the edges. If you're planning on refitting the digitizer, try and avoid touching the backside of the glass, as any fingerprints left on the glass can be frustrating to clean off. Close the iPad back up and find something to rest the digitizer against. We're using an iPad holder tool, but you can use anything sturdy to rest the digitizer on. Open the iPad back up, and along the left hand side there are 6 Torx screws that need to be removed. Once you've removed the 6 screws on the left hand side, you can move on to the right hand side where there are another 4 screws to remove. We're using a magnetic map throughout the guide to keep track of all the screws and stay organised. Now all of the screws have been removed, you can lift the LCD up and fold it backwards. The LCD is still connected via a flex cable at the bottom of the iPad, so don't try and lift it out with the iPad. We're going to be resting the LCD on an iPad stand, but you can either lay it down or rest it against a sturdy object. Just be mindful of the flex cables when doing this. Next, use a Phillips screwdriver to remove the screw securing the battery connected to the motherboard. Now add some IPA underneath the motherboard. This will allow you to pry the motherboard's battery connector up with a prying card in order to isolate the battery. This will cut power to the motherboard, stopping any damage being done. Next, there are 3 metal brackets that need their Phillips screws removing. Work your way up the iPad, removing all the screws, and then lift the brackets up with tweezers. Now the brackets have been removed, you can use a plastic spudger to disconnect the LCD flex cable from its socket, and then you can remove the LCD. Don't use anything metal when doing this as it can cause a short. Following this, you can disconnect the 3 digitizer flexes along the left hand side. Make sure you disconnect the front microphone flex rather than the front camera flex when disconnecting the 2 flexes in the middle. You can now slowly pull the digitizer away from the housing. Now you can clean up the iPad housing, making sure there is no adhesive residue left around its edges. Just be careful not to slip and puncture the battery when using tools this close to the battery. When most of the adhesive has been removed, you can go around the edges with a cleaning cloth and some IPA to help remove any remaining residue. Next, we're cutting off a bit of cleaning sponge and we're going to use tweezers to wet the sponge with some Tesa primer and brush it around the edges to help the digitizer bond to the frame when reapplied. Now we're going to be removing the metal bracket that sits on the back of the old LCD we just removed, and we're going to be transferring it to our new LCD. Some replacement LCDs will come with this bracket already installed. If yours has one already installed, you can skip this step. It's really important that the bracket lines up in the same spot on the new LCD, otherwise you'll really struggle screwing it back down. So make sure you take some measurements as to where it sits on the old LCD before removing it. Use a prying card to pry underneath the bracket to separate it from the adhesive holding it to the LCD. Use some IPA to help loosen the bracket from the adhesive if you're struggling. Now we're cleaning the metal bracket with our blade, making sure all of the adhesive is removed. Clean it up with some IPA and a cleaning cloth to make sure all of the residue is removed. Next, using the same method we used before, add some Tesa primer to the bracket. After adding the primer, apply some 2mm 61395 Tesa tape to the bracket, making sure the bracket is well covered, but make sure you leave a small gap in the centre. Now just add a bit of Tesa primer to your new LCD where the bracket is going to sit. Now remove the Tesa backing paper to reveal the sticky side. Stick the bracket down to the LCD, making sure the screw holes are pointing outwards, and just gently press it into place. Now that the LCD is finished and prepped, we're going to move on to prepping the digitizer. If you aren't changing your digitizer, you can skip this step. Start by grabbing your old broken digitizer and use a blade to pry gently underneath the front microphone and then remove it. Now grab your new digitizer and stick the front microphone down next to the front camera hole. Now do the same for the other half of the plastic bracket. There should be enough stick on the current adhesive to stick them down, but if you're finding they aren't sticking well enough, apply some 61395 Tesa tape to the bottom. Now with your new digitizer, remove any protective plastic sheets around the flex cables. Now connect the 3 digitizer flexes into their sockets. Now you can screw the 3 flex shields back in. Now you can reconnect the LCD flex into its socket and screw it in its shield. Now you can remove the card from the battery connector and refit its screw. Now you can fold the LCD back down into the frame. Before screwing the LCD back down, turn your iPad on and give it a quick touch test and make sure everything is working as it should. If it's not, power the iPad back down, isolate your battery again, and disconnect and reconnect the flex cables. Now you've tested the iPad, you can re-screw all of the Torx T2 LCD screws back in. We've left the film on this LCD as we're only using it for demonstration purposes, and we'll be removing it later on. At this point, you're going to want to use a small amount of IPA and clean the LCD with a cleaning cloth. Make sure it's dust free and then you can remove the film. This will prevent any dust falling onto the LCD when you remove the film. Try not to touch the LCD once you've removed the film because it will be frustrating trying to get rid of the fingerprints. Now give it one last quick test to make sure you're happy. Now you can remove all of the Tesa tape backing on the digitizer. All of our iPad digitizers come with Tesa tape pre-installed. If you're using the original digitizer or another digitizer that doesn't come with adhesive installed, you'll need to fit your own adhesive around the edge. It can be a bit fiddly removing the tape nearest to the frame. Just remove it carefully and try not to press the digitizer into the frame as you do it. Now you can remove the plastic protective sheet on the digitizer. Now just gently close the digitizer and press it firmly around the edges and the corner into the frame. And that's it. I hope this guide was helpful. If it was, we would really appreciate it if you could like this video, click the subscribe button, or leave a comment so we can keep making guides like this in the future. Thank you.